Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Free Toaster Podcast. I'm your host, Carlos Caro. Today, we're going to be talking about LendingClub's rebrand to Happen Bank. Before I introduce our guest, I want to just walk you through the quick history here. So, LendingClub was founded in October 2006. They publicly launched their peer-to-peer lending platform in May of 2007. They IPO'd in December 2014. In 2021, they acquired Radius Bank, transitioning them to a digital bank. And then on June 22nd this year, they rebranded to Happen Bank. And today I'm going to be speaking with Mark Elliot, who's the Chief Customer Officer at Happen Bank. He played a central role in the rebrand, helping shape its strategic direction and guiding its consistent expression across all internal and external touchpoints. Mark has more than 20 years of experience in marketing, branding, and business strategy in both large-scale financial companies and emerging industries. Prior to Happen Bank, he was the chief sales and marketing officer at cryptocurrency trading and custody infrastructure company Bakkt. Prior to that, he was CMO at BioCatch and CMO at TIAA, where he led the company's successful brand evolution and drove customer growth. He's also had experience at JP Morgan Chase, where he helped manage efforts to transition to digital banking, and at Capital One, where he led the national direct-to-consumer deposit business and efforts to expand retail banking into new geographies. Our conversation with Mark focused on not just all the operations that go into a rebrand, but all the thinking that went behind it. So if you're a performance marketer and you've never been on the front lines of a rebrand or have thought much about brand, I think you're going to find this episode really interesting. And we also got into some of the retrospective, some of the things he had wished he had done differently if he were to do it again. So with that, we'll cut to the conversation with Mark. Mark, I take it you're in New York, or do we find you somewhere else this morning?
I actually am in New York. Yes, I'm in Brooklyn. Happen Bank, as I'm sure you know, is headquartered in San Francisco. So I go out once or twice a month, but today I'm in Brooklyn.
Cool. Well, I'm familiar with that route. I used to do it a lot when I was at Credit Karma visiting partner banks in New York City. So, well, anyways, welcome to the show. Great to have you. Today we're going to be covering Happen Bank's rebrand from LendingClub. And I know you played a pivotal role in the organization. So really excited to get your take on how that all went. Before we get into kind of the details there, I noticed that Scott Sanborn has been quoted in the media as pushing for a rebrand for about 10 years.
Yep.
I know he's been at the company since about 2010, started as the CMO and then now acting as CEO. So before we discuss the details of the rebrand, can you walk us through the business case here?
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to. So as you mentioned, Scott, our CEO, this is definitely something that's been on his mind for a while. I joined what was then LendingClub 3 years ago. I started talking to Scott probably 6 to 9 months before that. And even in my first conversations with him, one of the first questions I asked him was, gosh, as I look at what LendingClub is today versus the original founding narrative of LendingClub as defining peer-to-peer lending, it is a profoundly different company with a materially different strategy. And the name LendingClub is very descriptive of a business model that no longer reflects the scope of what the company does. And we were in violent agreement, I would say. I think the question was, and you mentioned he'd been talking about it in the media for a really long time, when was the right time to make the shift? And it's a sort of combination of obviously the business strategy being at a point where it makes sense, the company being at a level of maturity to be able to execute against a rebrand. And so, that evolution from the category defining peer-to-peer lending platform to a multi-product national direct digital bank really reflects, who we are today. It reflects a very natural milestone in that evolution. It really isn't, and Scott's talked about this too, we're not changing direction to some extent, and you mentioned the 10-year timeline. Like, this is about the brand finally catching up to what the business is. We've expanded from what effectively was a single product lender to a much broader financial provider across multiple types of borrowing, obviously savings, and checking. And so that reflects a completely different emotional space for our customers. And we really wanted the brand to lean into that and make it very clear to our customers and our prospects that our ambition and our ability to help them goes beyond lending. Lending is core to what we do. It is the tip of the spear for us, and that really isn't going to change. But we really want to help our customers manage both sides of their balance sheet more actively. And as part of that, build deeper long-term relationships rather than just kind of coming in at singular borrowing moments in their life.
Got it. And I'm guessing that the bank charter had a good deal to do with the timing of the rebrand. Can you talk us through the relationship there between the charter and the rebrand?
Yeah, I mean, what I would say is that the bank charter, the original narrative and the strategy around the bank charter really was to drive diversification of earnings. It was about raising online deposits, creating a net interest income stream to complement the more volatile, at times, marketplace ups and downs of being forced to sell all of your loans through institutional investors. So, step one with the bank was let's build a balance sheet, let's kind of fund the company, let's get a more stable net interest income stream. And then step two was let's leverage the bank charter to drive a deeper, more profound multi-product relationship with our customers. So, we did that initially through some testing around cross-selling to our customers, but I would say the big foray into that was our Level Up checking account, which is the only checking account in the country that gives customers a discount for on-time loan payments. And that really was the first product designed from scratch for our borrowers. And we've seen, great success and pickup from our borrowers in that account. And the success of that, combined with the success of cross-selling savings accounts to our borrowers, really gave us the confidence that we were ready, that the bank was more than just a funding vehicle. It was really something that drove deeper long-term relationships.
Cool. No, and that connects a bit to the segment you all are attacking or you're serving. That the motivated middle is kind of how you guys talk about it publicly. Um, can you walk us through that brief? So like now that we have a business case, we have kind of a corporate imperative here to rebrand. I think you've written, or you guys have talked publicly about an agency being involved in the process. Is that right?
Yeah, we hired a strategy agency to really help us think through, I would say, the strategic direction around the rebrand. We knew the strategy of the company, but turning that into a brand strategy required some work. And then importantly, we really wanted to make sure we did deep research with our existing customers where we had deep affinity, and with that prospect audience defined for us as the motivated middle, around what would get that emotional connection, what kind of name would create that kind of emotional connection to take a fresh look at us, or to take a look at us if they'd never heard of LendingClub.
Got it. So was that the core of the brief to the agency, is on the emotional connection, or was there more to it?
There was a little more to it than that. I think we asked the agency to take a look at everything that we'd executed against from a strategy perspective, where we were going, and help us both create a brand strategy and a set of brand principles, and then, yes, do naming research to come up with a name that reflected our best selves, if you will, around what the company represented.
Cool. So let's talk about that a little bit, because I think a lot of the folks on our pod are performance marketers. So they're in that kind of the math side of things. And now we're talking a problem that's highly emotional and qualitative. So maybe let's talk through, like, on the naming side, maybe just some of the details there. Like how long was that initial list that they produced for you guys to consider?
We really did a pretty broad, I would say, exhaustive look at different names. So I would say at one point we had, over 100 names that we were looking at. And the way that this process kind of works is that, you get hundreds of names, and then you start to get into the sort of tactical reality, I'd call it, of branding. Like, what trademarks are available, what domains are available, what domains are available at what cost. And so that eliminated a number of options kind of off the bat.
Right.
Then what I would say is, you do what I would call like phase one of research, where you put the names to a broad set of both customers and prospects, and you get reactions like, is this a bank you would consider doing business with? How does this make you feel? Do you think this is what the company does? Do you think this reflects that company's strategy? And we narrowed it down to, I would say, like really 6 finalists that, we knew we had trademark availability. We knew we had domain availability. And then we went into much deeper research with those 6 names. Again, both with our existing customer and with the prospect defined by that motivated middle segmentation.
Gotcha.
And in that, Happen jumped out. It really kind of came out as the winner, reflecting why we exist. We clear the way for customers to make it happen. They're the heroes. We're just here in as a supporting actor or actress role to make it really easy for them in a world where banking isn't always easy. Turning plans into progress. That sense of accomplishment was a huge element that came out in the research. Of course, consumers want a better deal. Of course, they want it to be easy. But in addition to that, one of the things that honestly surprised us a bit that popped up in all of the research is that sense of, this is a company that helps me make progress in my life. This is a company that celebrates that progress. I feel better. Again, I feel like I am making it happen. And that emotional benefit of coming to us and working with us really was what drove the final decision around Happen Bank.
Got it. Was there, you talked to a number of the filters. I have actually 2 questions.
Yeah.
One is that you described this research you did with your existing customers.
Yep.
Was that in the form of like an online survey where they answered a bunch of questions? Was it in-person focus groups? Was it a mix of both? Like, how did you go about it?
It was mostly online surveys. We did do some qualitative research as well, with some like one-on-one interviews, and kind of got feedback from individual members. But it was pretty, I would say, predominantly quantitative.
Got it. And at this point of the research, are they reacting to just the name and print, or are they looking at the logo with colors? Like, how is it presented?
Yeah, just the name. I think the bringing the name to life around like how that progress and emotional benefit of making something happen to moving forward really came after we landed on the name.
Gotcha. Okay. And my other question was going to be, you mentioned some of the filters like domain names. I mean, you guys have a premium domain. I'm guessing those are really hard to find, probably expensive. But I'm curious, is the fact that you guys were a chartered bank, did that create complications in the filtering process at all?
No, it really didn't. But what I would say is that we did do separate, or as part of this research work, we did ask both our members and prospects the question of, should we have the word bank in the brand name or not? And there were good arguments both ways. Like, is bank old? Is bank backwards looking? Is bank traditional? Are we trying to position ourselves much more as a non-bank fintech, even though, of course, we are a chartered bank?
Right.
And what came out really completely 100% validated is that for our customer base, including the word bank was really important. It gives consumers confidence in how their money is held, the stability and trust behind the experience. And the target audience was much, much more confident and comfortable when they understood the company was a bank. A number of our own customers, never mind prospects, didn't even know LendingClub was a bank. And it really mattered when you were talking about going deeper into sort of checking and savings and more relational banking.
Got it.
So they wanted the trust of the bank, but, and this is a really important but, they wanted it to be innovative. They wanted it to be digital. They didn't want it to be the bank of their parents or their grandparents.
Gotcha.
So our customers felt we were already delivering that. We were delivering an innovative bank experience. But for, obviously the customers who perhaps didn't know us as well, or obviously prospects, it was really clear that the word bank was going to be a critical element to combine that sense of energy, trust. This is something new and different, and that sort of like stability of a bank.
Gotcha. So the getting into kind of more the economic considerations here, the performance marketer in me would start getting a little nervous around what might happen to my direct mail, my affiliate campaigns, my search campaigns. The LendingClub brand is at least well known to me. I've been in fintech for a long time. I assume it's well known to a lot of consumers as well. And I would start to get worried we get like conversion erosion as we flip from LendingClub to Happen Bank. I'm curious, did you do any in-market testing to de-risk that at all or measure that?
So there's a couple of things that we did do. You're right. I mean, they're doing a change like this absolutely always comes with some friction and risk. But there's several things we did to try to mitigate it and minimize it. We did do a significant amount of in-market testing once we'd made the decision, but before the brand change. So we tested the new color palette under the old LendingClub brand. We tested new brand language under the old LendingClub brand. And we found either very little impact, but when we did see statistically significant impact, it trended towards positive in all of the channels that we did. So we sort of felt, all right, from a visual identity, from a voice, from a positioning standpoint, from a color palette, check the box, we feel good. The other thing we did is several months before the actual rebrand, we did go to market with, Happen Bank is becoming, or LendingClub is becoming Happen Bank. So we did seed the market in direct mail and digital marketing on our homepage, and even to some extent with search, and obviously to our existing customers with email and messages in their online banking app, that this is coming to try to do everything we can to bring the brand attributes from LendingClub over to Happen Bank. And then after the rebrand, and you can see this still today in many of our touch points, we have Happen Bank, formerly LendingClub. So does that mitigate all of the concerns or questions? And to be sure, we have had to invest in both brand search terms and make it clear in the body of the copy and search that LendingClub is now Happen Bank formerly LendingClub. But we really tried to be very thoughtful and deliberate with the transition, as opposed to, I've done this before with more traditional branch bank acquisitions where on Friday it's X Bank, and then you drive by the branch on Monday, and it's just a new brand. So, and again, in that case, the branches themselves are billboards, sort of reflecting that kind of brand message. Obviously, we didn't have that luxury, so we did it in a very thoughtful, I would say, deliberate way with multiple stages, and even now we still are referencing, formerly LendingClub in many places to really try to make sure we're pulling forward that brand equity, those brand attributes over to Happen Bank.
Got it. Yeah, no, I've noticed that, and I'm. When will you know it's time to remove kind of that qualifier?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think we have a number of internal metrics, and you mentioned search. I think that's obviously a big one. At what point are people no longer materially looking for LendingClub? We obviously track all of our internal feedback, and we've got, call center. Every time Happen Bank is mentioned in the call center, we pick that up, and that sort of becomes part of the reporting. So, I think we have some internal frameworks for when that will change. I don't think we have a hard date set yet.
Got it.
I would expect it to be sometime this year, but again, we're letting the numbers speak versus having it be an arbitrary hard stop.
That makes a lot of sense. Let's take a quick break in the action here, because I'd like to introduce you to our newest sponsor, Fintel Connect. They're an affiliate marketing platform that can help connect you to publishers, influencers, and manage your compliance. I'd love for you to check them out. You can find them at fintelconnect.com, FINTEL connect.com, where you can connect directly with their founder and CRO. So I've had, I call it the privilege of having seen, at least from the outside, a few rebrands over my career. So I noticed based on your LinkedIn profile, we're actually at Capital One, like that 06 to 12 era. So that was I wouldn't call it a full-on rebrand because they didn't change the name.
They didn't change
But
the name. They changed the color logo, the palette.
yeah,
Yeah, it was actually a funny internal conversation, but please go ahead.
yeah, no, it's so I recall that one, but I view that one as more tactical. It seems a little smaller in scale than what you guys just went through.
Yeah.
And then I was at Credit Karma. It was a similar type of thing where the colors were out of date. And then they kind of rebranded the logos, the websites, a number of consumer facing assets.
Yep.
And I was never part of the core team that shipped those projects, but I remember them really being distracting to the organization, consuming
Yeah.
a lot of organizational attention. So I guess I'm curious on this one. Like, could you walk us through the logistics of this?
Sure.
The important elements. How big is the team? How long did it take? That sort of thing.
Yeah, and by the way, the Capital One I am familiar with because I was there during a lot of those changes. And you're right. Look, this is, and what we did is even more disruptive because we changed the name. We didn't just change the color palette. What I would say is that this was not just a brand team or a marketing team exercise. We mobilized the whole organization. And what I will say is that everybody across the whole organization was really excited for this change, despite how much heavy lifting and hard work there was, because I think they'd all been longing for this. They all recognized there's absolutely a lot of love for the LendingClub brand, but there was also, I think, a real acknowledgement that it didn't reflect the company we had become, and it was time for a change. Every time I interviewed somebody coming to LendingClub, that was always a question that came up. I said, "What's about the brand?" And I'm like,
Yeah.
"Well, we're working on it." So we finalized the name late last year, late 2025.
Okay.
We brought on some external experts who had done this work before from an operational and execution and project management perspective. And we sat down with them, like looked at all the touch points, looked at all the experience that some of these external experts had, and came back with a 6-month plan, spiking external contractor and agency resources for those 6 months. And so that's what we put down on paper. We started to execute against that. I would say really, I'm going to say almost January 1st, but January 2nd of this year, with a plan to do it roughly in about 6 months, which is exactly what we did. Everybody across the company was involved in some way, shape, or form. Obviously, website, the app, the call center, organic and paid channels, and then as I'm sure we made the decision as part of this to move from the NYSE to the Nasdaq, and because we're changing our ticker anyway. We took at the kind of investor base. We took a look at the kind of media pickup and energy we could get from a move, and the fact that the Nasdaq is, I think, represents, or at least is perceived to represent, more growth-oriented companies. So the combination of all of those things, and then working backwards from the timing of execution, the timing of listing change, the timing of legal entity change. Again, it really turned out to be about a 6-month process with a lot of spiked external agency and support. And yes, a lot of internal energy and focus as well.
Got it. Okay, so you guys really nailed it on the 6 months. If towards the end of the year you had the name, you launched the rebrand in June, or it was, right?
Yeah.
How long?
It was a lot of work.
Yeah, no, it sounds like it. How much time elapsed between that initial list of the 100 that the agency came back with and the decision on Happen Bank?
I would say that was about a quarter of work. I mean, obviously, we had senior leadership and management involvement and check-ins, and everybody has an opinion, and we wanted to hear everybody's opinion and point of view. Obviously, our board was involved. I mean, this was a pretty material change. So there were, there was the work, and then there was the socialization and the discussion around it. But I'd say it was about a quarter.
Got it. And I'm curious because I've been in many marketing orgs across my career, and it's one of the most dynamic places I've found myself in an organization. I've been in analytics, I've been in partnerships, but marketing is just kind of always on. It's always a little bit chaotic. Things can be changing. Like, I'm curious, was there like a moratorium on like new stuff, or were you continuing to iterate on the old brand while you were doing the new one? Like, just how did you manage all the change?
Yeah, that's a great question. There were two things that we did which I think really helped us manage this transition. We did have a moratorium about a month before. Now, were there exceptions due to kind of business, needs and requirements? Sure, absolutely. Um, so we did make some exceptions, but there was an escalation process for that, to be sure. Uh, and we also looked at all of the assets and we asked ourselves, are there assets that aren't really being utilized? Are there assets on our website that are extremely low traffic? Do we need to rebrand everything? And it was actually a really good exercise for us to say, hey, there's some things here that we may want to do a fresh version of this blog piece or the content piece in the future, but it's at a point now where it doesn't make sense to rebrand it. We're going to retire it. So
Got it.
so we had a process to look at both of those decisions around both. To your point, we did have a freeze for a period of time. Again, there were exceptions based on business realities, but there was a escalation decision process to make sure people weren't abusing that, for lack of a better
Yeah.
word.
Yeah.
And we did retire assets that no longer really reflected, our business strategy.
No, I love that. It's kind of an excuse to do some spring cleaning on stuff that shouldn't have been there in the first place. I love that. Um, so I guess you talked a little bit about some of the things you did to de-risk distribution and conversion. Um, I love the idea of kind of changing the color palette on the existing logo and getting the new messaging on the existing name. That's really clever. But I guess I'm curious to build on that. For lenders who are listening to this, considering a rebrand, what are some non-obvious ways this rebrand have impacted your distribution? You've been in market now maybe month and a half, something like that. What are the things that you've learned since launch that you wish you had thought of before?
Yeah. I mean, look, I would say what we've seen so far, we're really pleased with the outcomes. You mentioned search. Sure, that there was definitely a transitional moment where we did have to invest behind both brand search terms, and we knew that, and we planned for it, to be sure. And unlike, as I mentioned earlier, I've done several branch bank rebrands in my career where the signage of the branches themselves create awareness. We don't have that. And so we've been, as I mentioned earlier, very deliberate across really all of our channels about Happen Bank, formerly LendingClub. I think if you are a digital bank and you believe that or digital lender, and you believe that you do have some brand equity in your legacy name, that is a really, really good piece of hygiene to make sure that you're doing. And then obviously, I think part of that is working with, you mentioned Karma, working with all of the kind of intermediaries or affiliates or marketplaces with them to really understand, like, day to day, when this change happens, how is your brand reflected on those sites? Because you don't have as much full day-to-day control over some of those things. And we've done a little bit of testing with different partners to really try to nail down our positioning within those sites as well. So I think those are two things I would really encourage people looking at this to focus on, and really put a lot of energy and research and planning behind it. You're not just going to change, your X brand one day and your Y brand the next. I don't think you have that kind of luxury.
Gotcha. Um, as you think about the success here, I'm assuming you guys are a very quantitative organization, given your background from COF.
Yeah.
What are some of the KPIs you're watching to tell you whether this is working as expected?
Yeah, I would say we've got short-term, medium, long-term KPIs that we're looking at. So short-term, and this is probably the one you can see moving day to day, is the search volume for the old brand for LendingClub versus Happen Bank. That's something we're looking at daily. We're looking at those trends to sort of see, how those are beginning to, cross over, and the unaided or the organic search for the new brand is accelerating beyond where we were legacy as the old brand. So I think that's kind of short term we did institute before the rebrand a quarterly brand health survey. We'd never done it before, partially because, to your point, we were very performance marketing oriented. We never really made material investments in the brand before. Performance marketing was the brand in some ways. So we instituted a quarterly brand health survey, both with our existing customers and with the motivated middle. And I think this is important. We looked at a lot of different ways to do this, and there are a lot of providers that can give you broad Gen Pop national US awareness. But we knew we were very focused on the motivated middle. A specific segment represents roughly 1/3 of the US population. And we knew that as we begin to make investments in building brand awareness, we were going to focus on that population. So rather than just a general blunt instrument, broad, Gen Pop survey, we actually created a custom survey really focused on the prospects in the motivated middle. And that is more expensive than just doing a generic Gen Pop, but we really felt it was important to make sure we're honing in on our target. So we're gonna we measured one measurement before the rebrand. We've got measurement in flight now for our first quarter after the rebrand. We're expecting heroic changes, overnight, sure, but over time we're expecting to see, and we're hoping to see, legacy awareness, consideration, those brand attributes transfer over, and that's something we'll be looking at. Longer term, and I'm going to say, over 2-3 years, we absolutely are looking for those brand measures, and yes, investments we are looking to make in the brand to translate into business results. But we know that's going to take some time.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about some of the lessons, maybe from the process. Just kind of as we look to wrap the show, I'm really curious, as an operator going through a transition of the scale, some of the things you learned. Is there like a line item as you look back, just from a cost perspective, things you needed to do to get this done, that you didn't budget for originally in the plan?
Yeah, I mean, what I would say is that when we pulled together the budget based off of our first round of analysis and planning and assessment, and then when we actually started to do the work, the inventory of assets actually turned out to be much larger than we originally planned for or anticipated. And particularly just the sheer volume of customer-facing assets, especially email. And not just marketing emails. It's, we've got deposit servicing emails, and then we've got debit card system servicing emails, and then we've got applications in flight for loans emails, and then we've got ones on the auto. And that turned out to be larger than I think we originally, planned for. Now, as I said earlier, that became a little bit of a forcing function to ask ourselves, "Oh, really needed? And should we update the copy?" Because some of them were system-generated emails that we really hadn't taken the hard look at for a while. So that was a little bit daunting at first. Now, what I will say is that with what I'll call lower impact assets, we did accelerate our use of AI pretty significantly over that months. And I think we were a little bit lucky, to be honest with you, because the AI capabilities were improving at an exponential pace while our assets we had to rebrand were also going up. So those lines crossed for us in a way that allowed us to mitigate the budget impact of, oh my gosh, we have so many more assets we need to rebrand, we need more designers, we need more people. We were able to leverage AI tools really much more materially than we expected. And that really helped keep the budget in check overall. So that's one area where we did run a little bit over. We had other areas where we ended up running lighter than expected. Everything ended up within our budget, which I was thrilled about, and within our overarching financial outlook that we've communicated to the street and investors.
No, I love that. Yeah, no, I'm guessing pre-AI, this is just a lot of humans staring at copy over and over, and like eyes glazing, and like making sure you catch every little detail. And yeah, I can see how AI could be massively helpful there. So that makes a lot of sense. Looking back on just the kind of the effort overall, like, would you have played this differently or done anything differently given what you know today?
Yeah. Look, it's a huge project. I mentioned email systems and servicing email systems. The the thing I would say I wish I'd like done a little bit differently is, could we have spent even more time working on how to make this even more seamless for our customers? And I think we have a lot of customers who don't engage with us monthly, weekly. They have a loan with us. We aspire to engage with them monthly, weekly. That's a big part of the rebrand. And so, I think in hindsight, I probably would have put even more time into figuring out how we could make that transition more seamless for our customers. But overall, I feel really good about what we accomplished.
Cool. And I guess the last one is a little bit more of a strategy question, but like, what advice would you give a CMO who's convinced that the reason their distribution isn't working is the brand and the name? And I'm curious how often you think that's actually the problem.
Yeah, look, it's a great question. I mean, I think about some of the great brands that are really successful where the name itself is not a hindrance, even though it seems odd. I always think about Geico, for example, right? Government employees,
Yeah.
insurance, but Geico is a great brand. So I'm not always convinced that brand is the problem. I mean, in the end, a new name can't be a substitute for a fundamental business strategy. Like in our case, the business strategy transformation, the business transformation came first. We didn't rebrand in order to fix a problem or become something different. We rebranded because the name no longer reflected what the company already was become. And I think that's a really critical distinction. I think about, and I don't want to name names, but a couple of examples of brands trying to lead the business strategy over the last few years, and some of those didn't go so well. So, for us, there was just a clear strategic disconnect. We'd gone from a peer-to-peer lending marketplace to a digital bank with lending and other financial tools to, help you live your life better. But our identity, because of the name, was anchored back to that original founding narrative of peer-to-peer lending. And so, our stakeholders, I mentioned every time I interviewed somebody, our investors, our employees, were always asking us, when would the brands catch up? So we had, I think, the tailwind, if you will, of all of those elements kind of leading us to this, as opposed to a CMO, and I've seen this sort of trying to pull the business in a different direction that it's not ready to go.
Gotcha. And one more question before we wrap. Just given you took the discussion here on the brand in a direction that was more quantitative than I expected, given your approach to surveying and the filters you ran on the potential names. One of the things I find fun about marketing, it's a really nice blend between art and science. Like there's a lot of math, there's a lot of emotion, there's a lot of art to it. You described the process you took as feeling actually more scientific than I might have expected. I guess where do you land on, like, at least in the context of financial services, is great brand more science? Is it more art? Is it a good mix of the two? Kind of where do you sit on that?
Boy, this we could have a whole separate conversation about this. You mentioned my time at Capital One, where I really saw the power of the combination of both, right? The testing in specific cities and kind of doing geo fence testing of brand versus performance marketing, and looking at those tests over the course of years in order to really understand the power, but then also the power of great, disruptive, funny, engaging, creative, which definitionally I think is in many ways the art part of this. A lot of the work we have done up until now, to your point, was very quantitative. We really wanted to make sure our customers and prospects saw themselves in this brand. Now that we've done that work, I think the art part starts to pick up a bit more now. How do we tell the story of Happen Bank out in the market, not just through bottom of funnel performance marketing, save X, earn Y, refinance your credit card debt in 10 minutes, what are all of those very tactical, functional messages? How do we build this brand to create those emotional connectivities, to be top of mind for the motivated middle? That does involve some art.
Yeah.
Sure. So I think our color palette, the way we designed the logo, the forward lean representing forward progress, there certainly were a lot of things in there that we didn't test. We just believed from an art and energy and creative design perspective, these reflect the visual identity that we want the brand to represent what it stands for. But I think the real art part now comes in the how do we build this brand? How do we kind of create those connections with consumers so that they see themselves in Happen Bank?
No, that's awesome. Well, I'm wishing you all the best of luck on that
Thank you.
journey. I'll be following along. I'm very personally very curious on how that all comes together. So I'll be paying close attention. Perhaps there'll be an opportunity in a year or two to regroup and hear more about how that art piece went down. But Mark Elliott, thank you so much.
Thank
Great
you.
conversation on the rebrand here from Lending Club to Happen Bank. Really enjoyed having you on the show, and thanks again for taking the time.
Thanks, Carlos. Really enjoyed it. Appreciate the time.